Stories connect us. They are important to all of us and to the mission of StoryConnect. For you, what stories of heartbreak, pain, and suffering have served as a warning? And what stories of healing and redemption and love have given you hope and exposed a path? Now this might sound strange, but how much of your story do you truly know that you've revisited and can look at? How much are you willing to share? In Hawaiian culture, you ask someone if they'd like to talk story. It's a real thing. It's where you sit down and you tell each other stories about your life. You go back and forth. Can you imagine how connective and healing that would be for you and for our world? It might be that Kendra and her counseling practice might be out of business. There are so many amazing untold stories out there that need to be unleashed to heal us and connect us. As they say, you gotta feel it to heal it. A part of my story, when I was in college about 15 years ago, I was doing a lot of storytelling. I was on Facebook constantly. I was posting stories, commenting stories, reading stories. I was on it all the time. I was addicted to it. My posts and the feedback that I received fueled my identity, which was continuing to hollow out. I would post stories of a child, one of 4,200 kids who died every day from dirty water around the world, or the story of another child who was ripped from his parents and enslaved as a soldier. I was addicted to posting because it gave me purpose, and I justified it and I fed into it because it aligned with my major of marketing and social business. I felt like it was my job to tell the good news of those who were doing something about the bad. At one point, I had 4,995 Facebook friends. And one of my biggest accomplishments was being one of 250 friends of Chris Anderson. He's the CEO of TED Talks. Now, I crazily felt like we had a connection, like a real connection, like that friend and all those friends meant something to me. But again, the artificialness was hollowing me out. And at this time in college, I was experiencing some of the lowest times of my life. Kendra, on the other hand, was embedded in the real world. She lived stories and told them personally. She was with people. She became a truer feedback cycle. And most importantly, she was always pointing to the source of all identity and validation and unconditional love, where I am fully known and fully loved. She helped me slowly, and it was painfully detach from social media. So 10 years ago, I deleted Facebook, and I waved goodbye to those 4,995 friends. They stood on the shore as I sailed away, and it felt like a real detachment. So I have been allergic in many ways to storytelling digitally or posting publicly ever since then. And even now, even as I speak right now, this version of storytelling out in some version of publicly to partners and friends it's been weird for me. It's added anxiety for multiple reasons. It builds up pressure and in many ways, though, the only way through it is through it. And so it's healing for me. I'm sailing what feels like parallel to another shore, a healthier shore, and I'm testing the dry land. Stories are important. They need to be shared and heard. We need to replace the 24/7 breaking news cycle with the true and the good and the beautiful news cycle. This past spring, a friend, Tyler, he texted me and he said, "Hey, I know it's last minute, but I have an extra ticket for an event tonight I think you'd love. Can you come?" And now with little kids, I rarely say anything tonight in weekends, but Kendra said yes, go. She really urged me to go. So as I was driving into Dayton over the bridge, I noticed a buzz. There were so many cars for such a small event, but it wasn't a small event. I couldn't find a parking spot. And as I walked up to this downtown theater that I never really noticed it. I always just drove on by it. I walked into this gorgeous lobby, and it was filled with people. And then I stepped into this beautiful old theater with chairs from floor to balcony and balcony to ceiling. There was over 1,100 seats, and they were all sold out. And I felt so cool. Tyler walked me down to the middle of the second row. And as we were sitting down, he leaned over and he said, "Look, what I love so much about this event is the stage. One standing microphone. That's it." That day, 6 people from around the globe and 1 from Dayton told their story on what's called the Moth Main Stage. It's the most premier storytelling event in the country, and it tours in different areas. Now, each person told a personal, true 15-minute story without notes. And I was here for it. I was in it. I leaned in the whole time. I did all the things. I baha laughed when a woman was like physically protected from her other alpha females, like in her gang thing. And I teared up when another woman was living a double life. She was losing her family. She was severely depressed. And I was frozen in connective silence and tension, waiting to see if a colorblind man might see color for the very first time. We were all connected. The story connected us, and so much so that during intermission, I was weaving through the people, and I audibly but quietly whispered, "Image bearer, image bearer." I would point. And to me, that means you are fully known. You are fully loved. You are fully known. You are fully known. You are beloved. You are amazing. You are important. You are lovely. I felt connected to each person. It was something different. I had rarely experienced something like this before. And this is another beautiful detail. So this event was only hosted in Dayton once before, and I didn't realize that my friend Tyler, he was the only local who told his story. Now, his story is one of being a global touring punk rock drummer. At one point, he weighed over 300 pounds. He was addicted to crystal meth for years, and he miraculously became clean in one day. It happened on a dime, and now he's doing amazing collective impact work as a pastor in Kettering. It's so cool. So I left the event lost in the fields. Like I said to Tyler, "Hey, man, I can't talk. There's so much going on in here, man," pointing to my head. This is it. This is it. And now I get a dose of this. I get to experience this connective power of stories and storytelling monthly at Dayton Story Slam. And you are welcome to join me. Who knows? Maybe you or me will tell our story one night. That'd be cool. Stories connect us. Storytelling is important. And I have been allergic and anxious to share those stories, but I'm figuring it out. In a big way, I've been wondering, how do I even best tell the story of StoryConnect? If someone asked you, "Hey, what's StoryConnect?" would you know? What's the one foundational story? How do all the other stories fit into it? For me, and you've likely felt this, there's hundreds of stories of StoryConnect. What really brings it home? So I'm trying to figure that out, and so I pay attention to what I repeat. So listen to this. What I often say is this observation, or maybe this story about society, that society's greatest and our most personal issues aren't alleviated because of a lack of resources, but rather a lack of the right connections. That we don't have a resource problem, we have a connection problem. And StoryConnect makes and nurtures strategic connections for resources to flow to areas of great need for sustainable impact. Now, to me, this seems like some foundational phrasing or some foundational work. There's stories that there's a story happening in the world of disconnection, that we're bowling and we're scrolling alone, and that the stories of connection, both personally and at a societal level, is what we need to push forward. We need to help to solve the connection problem, and I believe that I'm wired as a connector. Strengths Finder, 7 years in a row, my number one is connectedness. So with telling the smaller stories, I think it exposes kind of like the larger story. So these have been some challenges and invitations I've been looking at square in the eye and trying to figure out given that I'm experiencing this work every day. So the first one is obvious. How do I share stories for people to really feel connected to it, to the work? And so I just finished reading How to Tell a Story, which is written by the Moth, so I can learn and practice. And then this is something that I do all the time. I make connections. I make introductions. How do I tell the story of making and nurturing strategic introductions and connections? Because in my mind, the way I see it, there's at least two stories going on here. There's the story of each individual. Maybe there's more people in the room. And then each of those stories represent an organization. So that's a lot colliding. And I've estimated that I make about 10 to 15 introductions a week. That's a lot of stories. How do I pick and choose? And how do I share the value of designing and hosting connective events where multiple people are connecting? So I've designed and hosted over 30 in-person and online gatherings in the past year. Do I share the story of where it's leading, or where people came from, or the value, or what happened in that meeting? How do I draw that out? So for many people, you got to feel it. So how do I help you feel it or invite you to feel it? Here's another question. How do I share the stories of what I know, at least $150,000 that have flowed to areas of need because I helped to make and I strategically made a connection? And that's just the known about. Here's another one. How do I share how a person is more transformed at the ground level because of how I helped either connect or equip an organization in improving, whether that's their strategy, their soft or their hard skills? I do that all the time. How do I tell that story? And this is something that I've also struggled with. So when telling stories to you right now, how do I honor you and all parties, regardless of convictions and beliefs? Knowing that I have my beliefs, you have your beliefs, we all have different convictions and beliefs, and that comes with a different language. And at the core, that kind of changes that language and the reason and the intention. And finally, is the lemon worth the squeeze? Does anyone listen or care? Does it matter? Does it make a difference? Again, these are some of the challenges and invitations I'm looking at. One way that I'm kind of, helping to relieve some of this tension is by telling the stories with kind of open source pictures and videos. Those are things that tell thousands of words. So I'm not inviting publicly, but privately to just partners and friends. I invite you to view and follow a private photo album. And during my days, I'll add pictures regularly that relate to the work, and it'll help you get a feel, a vibe, and track with kind of the day-to-day. And sometimes I'll leave captions. You can comment. I'll respond to them. And as of today, I have completed 2 stories that I'm pretty proud of. I hope you listen to them. They feel good. They feel right. And stories beget stories. So one of the reasons why sharing stories is that I get to hear yours and maybe it resonates with you. One of them is about Kevin and the momentum that through Kevin's story is helping to recruit youth mentors from 1% of U.S. adults mentor to 10%. Now that happens at the county level and beyond. And then the other one is about kind of the history of collaborative work, noticing kind of a collaborative bone I've always had, and how that's led to my first experience of being one of the primary designers and executors of a leadership summit, a conference with over 130 people, in that we focused on connection over content all day. So those are 2, but there's more to come about social business, community development, poverty, trafficking. There's 3,000 women who are sold every month and day in. Foster care. How can we get to more families waiting for kids than kids waiting for families? I also, at some point, would love to share a quick, fun, and miraculous story of the new office that I'm in. And again, there's hundreds of stories. Kendra keeps saying, tell that one. Well, I'm working on it. So I am still in the water on the storytelling boat. I'm learning from the shore that I came from, and I'm on the edge of what I perceive to be a healthier shore. I joyfully accept the role of chief connector. I love that. But this week, I've touched that scar of being someone who posts or someone who story tells. And it's reopening, and it needs some healing and tending to this scar. I know it's at the heart level. I don't want to do all this work for me. I don't want to story tell for me. And when, maybe step into my shoes, when do you feel like you have something to hide, prove, or fear? It's uncomfortable, but I believe that the only way through it is through it. I have to believe that my identity does not come from sharing this, what you're listening to right now, and how you perceive it or respond to it. I know that I have to believe, breath by breath, that I am fully known and fully loved. But also, and in the same breath, when the audience of a storyteller doesn't respond, when they don't clap or laugh or gasp, it's the same when closest partners and rope holders don't acknowledge the story that's being shared. That absence is noticed. When you respond with any note of thanks, affirmation, or honesty, it's healing and it's fueling to me and the mission. It does provide energy. It's so much easier when we're connected. As we venture on, know that your story is present and hidden in each story told. You are right there. I carry you with me daily. And I thank God for you and your support each day. You do help solve the connection problem. You bring healing and transformation to a hurting world through the connections and the resources that flow through you and through me in the stories that are told. Because of that, you are co-building this container for connectors, for storytellers, in stories of collaboration and collective impact that result. I'm so excited, and I'm so thankful for you. Let's do this.